This is why dire wolves are the strongest wolves. In case you didn't already know, wolves are a big subject of interest to humans. From our thousands of years of war against prehistoric wolves to the thousands of years of friendship with wolves and their domesticated descendants, there is a lot of history. Native Americans named heroes after them. Modern bros get them tattooed during spring break. In film and TV shows, moody teenage girls get tied up in romantic entanglements with equally moody teenage wolf boys. However, in recent pop culture, the werewolf has been overtaken by the dire wolf in fandom and interest, largely thanks to Game of Thrones. In recent science, gene editing technology has made incredible strides toward bringing the beast back from extinction, which is funny because we might actually get dire wolves back before we get the winds of winter. Today, we're taking a closer look at why the dire wolf was such a phenomenal animal and how its power and skills matched up against other wolves. Big Bad Wolf. Despite the great knowledge found from fossils and geologic data, a lot about the dire wolf and how it lived remains a mystery. Even classification is a tricky topic. These days, the dire wolf is known as Inosion dirus, though its original scientific name is Canis dirus. Like the modern gray wolf Canis lupus, the dire wolf is part of the broader dog family Canidae. However, recent fossil analysis has led the majority of experts to determine that the dire wolf is not part of the Canis genus and must therefore be classified under a different genus, hence Inosion. It also turns out that there were two dire wolf subspecies, Inosion dirus dirus and dirus gildeyi. Dirus dirus was the larger of the two, with an average body weight of 150 pounds, while dirus gildeyi had an average weight of 132 pounds. These weight figures mean both dire wolf subspecies would be similar in size to the largest gray wolves, with others being bigger. Gray wolves have an average weight of 88 pounds, and the largest specimens can reach 175 pounds. Like modern wolves, dire wolf size would depend on sex, age, region, time of the year, and food availability. Also, like gray wolves and other canids, male dire wolves were larger than females of comparable age. As you already know, size is often directly proportional to strength and formidability in the animal kingdom. Therefore, because the dire wolf was larger than the gray wolf, it is reasonable to assume that it was stronger too. One common arena for animal strength comparison is bite force, which is the force an animal can exert with its jaws per unit area. For gray wolves, bite force has been measured at least 800 pounds per square inch, psi, with larger specimens exceeding 1,000. So, if we infer from the gray wolf's data and compensate for the dire wolf's more robust skull and jaws, it is safe to estimate that the prehistoric canid could reach 1,200 psi of bite force or more. Skeletal evidence also shows that dire wolves had thicker bones, which likely supported greater muscle mass. Again, more muscle equals more power. Another sign of the dire wolf's power is the kind of prey animals that it lived with and lived on during the Pleistocene. Giant plain bison, camel-like herbivores, horses, as well as large deer species, are common finds at major dire wolf fossil sites like the La Brea tar pits. These mega herbivores, as they are known to scientists, would require exceptional power to catch and kill. Then there's the competition. Sure, there were lynxes, cougars, gray wolves, and coyotes competing for similar prey as the dire wolf, but the era was defined by the mega predators. The wilds of the Pleistocene were haunted by the menacing shadows of giant, short-faced bears, American lions, and the saber-toothed Smilodon cats. These powerful predators were as powerful as they were ruthless, so the dire wolf needed to be built tough to stand its ground and survive. Today, we have an incredibly fascinating new source of information about dire wolves and how they work: Colossal Sciences. This American company has recently made worldwide headlines by using gene editing technology to resurrect the dire wolf. Sort of. What these scientists have actually done is splice certain genetic codes, such as skeletal structure, fur, and even certain behavioral traits from DNA found in fossils, and place these codes into gray wolf embryos. Despite being in different genera, Dire wolves and gray wolves were closely related enough for such hybridization to happen. The modified embryos are then implanted in female domestic dogs. So far, 3 dire wolf pups have been born: Romulus, Remus, and Khaleesi. The former 2 are males, who are just over 6 months old at the time of this video, and the latter is a 1-month-old female. At 6 months old, the male pups already weighed 80 pounds, almost the same as the average adult gray wolf. They also show incredible thickness in the limbs, strong wild behavior, and gloriously thick pale fur. They have fairly pronounced manes as well, and whether the female grows a mane too remains to be seen. The pale fur has gone a decent way towards dispelling previous beliefs that dire wolves were brown or rusty red in color. As Ice Age predators, a whitish coat does make sense for camouflage reasons, while the extra long fur is an obvious adaptation for extra harsh winters. So far, the pups are still being fed by humans, but there is potential that their hunting prowess will be tested and studied. But before that, Colossal Sciences aims to produce more lab dire wolves and build a pack so the animal's social dynamics can be observed in greater detail. Of course, the elephant in the room is that while these amazing pups have certain dire wolf DNA and physical traits, they are still more than 90% gray wolf. As a result, a lot of voices in and around the scientific community assert that these animals are not really Inocyondirus reborn. However, this genetic editing tech is probably the most promising way to truly bring the dire wolf, and countless other extinct and endangered creatures, back. Time will tell, though, and the question of the ethics behind making animals in labs promises to be a highly divisive one at the least. So what else do we know about dire wolves in general? Well, while we know that they favored certain mega herbivores, the wolves were also pretty adaptable and opportunistic. Other animals like sloths, rodents, and birds also found themselves on the menu. Extremely large animals like adult mammoths were likely beyond the dire wolf, but calves and juveniles were still vulnerable, especially to sizable packs. Scavenging was also a certainty. Winter in the Ice Age could get extremely mean, so competition over kills and lucky carcass finds was seriously intense. In such cases, dire wolves would clash and fight with bears, cats, and other canids for food, with mixed results. Dire wolves were probably more successful at driving gray wolves and coyotes away from kills than they were at intimidating short-faced bears or smilodons, but a very big dire wolf pack would have given even the larger predators pause for concern. Dire wolves were also widespread throughout North and South America, thriving in a bunch of different habitats. They were found in grasslands, forests, the mountains, coastal areas, and even semi-deserts, and they often had habitat-specific adaptations to excel in their home ranges. When it comes to evolution, no one is 100% sure what the dire wolf descended from. The dominant theory is that dire wolves were descendants of the coyote-like Eucyondivisi, an animal that lived in the Americas around 9 million years ago. Another theory is that it had a common ancestor with the gray wolf that lived in Eurasia and later migrated to North America via the Bering Land Bridge. Dire wolves are believed to have lived in the late Pleistocene and early Holocene, giving them a temporal range of about 125,000 to 10,000 years ago, which is fairly short. This period, which is also known as the Great Ice Age, was a time of great change, as the Earth's geology and climate were shifting drastically, and humans were emerging as the planet's most dominant species. Despite its robustness, adaptability, and likely intelligence, there were strong reasons why the dire wolf failed to survive till the modern era and present day, though some are just as mysterious as itself. So why did the dire wolf go extinct? Well, one major reason is likely climate change. About 13,000 years ago, over 90 large animals were dwindling and going extinct due to climate and environmental changes. One group that was hit very hard was the mega herbivores, mammoths, camels, and certain bison species. These animals were also staples for predators like the dire wolf, which resulted in even more intense competition for smaller prey animals. And when it comes to smaller prey, dire wolves were not specialists. Their stocky builds and fairly short legs meant they weren't as fast as gray wolves. Additionally, A stockier build often comes at the expense of endurance, another area where the gray wolf had them beat. Furthermore, bigger bodies need more food, and packs of animals with big bodies needed enormous quantities of food. Smaller gray wolves were able to sustain themselves better than their dire cousins because they needed fewer calories and could get those calories from a wide range of small and fast prey animals. Dire wolves, therefore, were forced to spend a lot of energy to catch animals that wouldn't necessarily meet their caloric needs as consistently as survival required. Also, because of their physical limitations, dire wolves would have to endure a lot of unsuccessful energy-sapping hunts that only accelerated the starvation process. Then there is the issue of humans. As people established themselves in the Americas, they refined their tools and weapons, which allowed them to compete with other predators for game or kill them directly. Dire wolves would have been an indirect or direct threat to human well-being, so humans would routinely hunt and kill them to secure their own survival chances. Faced with relentless change and ever-stiffening competition, the dire wolf would eventually succumb to extinction between 13 and 10,000 years ago.